Okay, today is an exciting video for me because I want to share my entrepreneurial experience and how the first startup that I co-founded raised over 500,000 euros in venture capital, how we sold our physical product to a partner network of over 600 stores, how we acquired over 15,000 paying online customers, and how we scaled the company to 7-figure revenue numbers. However, also part of that journey was that we filed for bankruptcy just after 3 years, but yeah, eventually it didn't turn out the way that we planned. I'm Simon and I co-founded my first company in 2020 with 2 of my fellow friends. I'm doing this video partly for me because I really also want to recap what happened throughout those 3 years and what I would do different now looking back. But mainly I want to do this video for you who are currently maybe building a company or thinking about building a company, so that when you watch this video you can learn from our mistakes and save a lot of time, mainly money, and also a lot of nerves. So let's dive into it. So naturally, I want to start at the beginning and how we came up with the idea. And that was actually in 2019, in November 2019, when one of my co-founders, who was just a friend back then, came to me and said, let's sign up to this innovation challenge where hundreds of students sign up in order to find a solution to a worldwide pressing problem over the course of 1 week. So together with one more friend, the 3 of us just basically locked ourselves into one room and just really had the pressure of coming up with an idea within 1 week in order to pitch the idea to a jury at the end of the weekend. So finally, after a lot of research, discussions, watching YouTube videos, and just gathering inspiration from anywhere we could, one of our co-founders finally came up with an idea that actually ended up winning us the challenge. And the idea was actually a quite simple but very impactful concept on how to reduce plastic waste. Because during our research phase, we realized that no one is actually doing anything about the large contribution that cleaning products have on plastic waste. The problem that we identified was that there was no reusing incentives for daily cleaning products like your cleaning spray, for instance. So instead of throwing the whole plastic bottle away when the cleaning product is empty, we developed a small cleaning tablet that you can just drop into your bottle, and you fill up the bottle with tap water, and after 5 minutes the tablet has dissolved and turned your tap water into effective cleaning liquid, so that one tablet could basically prevent you from buying another plastic bottle. So after doing some further research over the course of that weekend, we actually came up with a good pitch for the jury, and we ended up winning that challenge. Winning the challenge back then was a big deal for us because it didn't only give us validation that we're onto something and we would have finally an idea that we can all work on, but it also gave us access to the university's business incubator, where we had dedicated business coaches, mentors, office space, and all of a sudden we were also surrounded by like-minded people who are working on their own business, which added to the peer pressure of us just wanting to execute this. And that was the unofficial founding date of our company. So after we decided that we want to give this a serious go, the first task was to eventually validate if there's interest in the market for such a product. The first thing that we did was just that we created a simple landing page that we filled with digital mock-ups of the product and renders, and then we just ran some traffic to the site by paid ads, just asking for people to sign up if they were interested to test early stage prototypes. So we didn't have anything more than just the idea, the landing page, the digital mock-ups, and some paid ads that were driving traffic to the site. But after spending maybe only 200 euros on ads, we had over 500 people who signed up on our landing page just to test the product. And we took that as a giant validation of the market, that there was some kind of interest in the concept that we were about to build. After we received this initial validation of the market, we went ahead and contacted the people that signed up on our website and just did about 100 customer interviews with those people, learning everything on how they currently buy cleaning products, what they value about cleaning products, what they like, what they don't like. And we really became experts on people's cleaning behavior, like brand loyalty and all those things, which really helped us in the further product development, because we took all this customer data into consideration later on in the product development phase. It was incredible how fast and how cheap we were able to get some market validation and a lot of customer data, because people were just excited to talk to us. It was easy to convince them to do some interviews over the phone, and really in a couple of weeks we felt so much more secure that we are actually onto something. And that was crucial before we started to spend €1 on product development. After we had validated the market, it took us over half a year to just come up with the product. And the biggest challenge here was just that manufacturers would not take us serious. And I don't blame them, because we were just 3 students in our 20s with no track record. We were asking them for tiny minimum order quantities, if that was for the bottle, for the tablets, or for the packaging. and everything was funded by ourselves. So we of course had strong budget constraints. So the challenge was really to find manufacturers that would believe in us and the idea enough in order to give us a chance and maybe, lower the minimum order quantities so we can afford it with the funds that we had at the time. Also, we were no chemical experts by any means. So we really had to start from scratch by developing prototypes ourselves, convincing chemical consultancies to work with us and, start creating cleaning formulas that we can then use to press into tablets. So it was a very, very difficult time, especially at the beginning when we had nothing to show for. But we didn't let us discourage, and we just continued pushing and pushing and pushing. And eventually we found some manufacturers that we could start with. And then in January 2021, roughly 1 year after we had the idea, we were finally able to launch. So we finally had a full inventory, everything was prepared, and we were able to launch our first paid ads in order to properly launch the product. And what happened after we published the first video ad on Facebook and Instagram was really beyond our wildest dreams, because the orders just came flying in. We were totally overwhelmed by the positive market response right off the bat. We were handpicking all the orders individually ourselves in our dorm room. It was a classic early stage startup chaos where we tried to fulfill all the orders we had. We'd work day and night, and it was very exhausting, but the dopamine was real. And I think looking back, that was one of the most exciting times in our startup journey. So after working like this for 3 months, where we packed orders day and night and we were hustling away, in March 2021, we were finally able to celebrate our 1000th customer who came through our online shop. At this stage, our online customer acquisition came 100% through paid ads only on Facebook and Instagram. And of course, that was great and very exciting. But we knew that, something had to change. We were dealing with constant inventory problems. We had late deliveries, customer support overload, and we were scaling, but it was not sustainable. At this point, we realized that we have a product market fit, but we were basically running around like chickens without heads. So we realized that we had to fundraise in order to invest into inventory, outsourcing the fulfillment, different product lines, customer support, and just to unburden the founder team, because it was not sustainable that we were packing orders all night. Therefore, the next milestone that we were able to celebrate as a team was just 1 month later, when we closed our pre-seed funding round. And just to share some context, back then in 2021, the VC market was at an all-time high. VCs invested over 100 billion euros in Europe alone, and we just joined that gold rush and just got our piece of it. But of course, it was also one of the most fun times, where we went out with pitch decks and we traveled around, we talked to different investors, we faced tough questions, and I think we were quite good in fundraising and telling them a story that we also believed in at that point. So we onboarded the investors, we sold the shares, we received the money and invested right away. So at this stage, the company is now 4 months old. We have over 1,000 customers in our online shop, and we have just raised 250,000 from around 5 business angels. So the future is looking bright, and we have a lot of money to invest into, renting an office space, outsourcing the fulfillment so we can actually concentrate on growing the company again. We can do some key hires, and we can also think about what kind of product line we want to expand into next. So now, 3 months later, in July 2021, our sole purpose was to grow this company as fast as possible. And the fastest way that we saw was just to expand the product portfolio to actually have a broader customer audience for our online store. So we quickly launched some cleaning equipment like branded sponges, brushes and all that, but we also started new product horizontals with plastic waste-free dishwasher tablets and plastic waste-free laundry powder. Those products were not as innovative as the cleaning tablets that we initially launched with, but the goal with those products was to increase the average order value and to get more money from each customer that checks out on our online store. At this stage of the company, everything went according to plan, because we doubled our monthly customers from 350 to 700 just by trying out different customer acquisition channels, because we added influencers into the mix. We tried all kinds of brand collaborations, ambassadors, sending out frequent newsletters to motivate customers to come back to our online store, and we were also contacting the first retail stores. At this stage, the team size was about 8 people. We got invited as speakers on events, and we were constantly improving every part of the business. However, then the next milestone kind of happened already in Q1 2022, when things really started to change online. because all of a sudden the paid ads that we were still relying to a big part just got so brutally expensive that it really screwed up our unit economics, and all of a sudden we were not profitable on the first sale that we did. And that was of course an issue. So the customer acquisition costs went through the roof. At the same time, we realized that the returning customers that came back to our online shop to shop again with us were just not spending enough money in order to make the whole business plan viable. While we were realizing in Q1 22 that the business model that we have been building in 2021 wasn't really future-proof, there was also a major shift in the whole market in Europe that made it very, very hard for us to continue the way that we built in 2021. Our unit margins were just shrinking constantly. The Russian and Ukraine war kind of started, and the freight and energy cost exploded, and it felt just overnight people stopped buying premium eco brands and just opted for cheaper, maybe private label options, which really hurt the whole business model. It was also exactly at the time when the European startup funding fell by 40%. All the investors were asking to move to profitability, and overall it was really hard time for startups. Unfortunately, it was right in this time when we had to raise our second round, and as you can imagine, it was not the best conditions that we were in, because we were plateauing on our revenue, we were far from profitability, we needed money in order to finance the retail expansion, and of course the VC climate was at an all-time low in 2022. However, us and our existing investors plus some new investors believed in this product so much that we were able to raise a bridge round of around 220,000 euros in order to finance the next steps. However, of course, the valuation of the company was plateauing, and it wasn't a great signal to the market in general. Now, of course, the pressure was on us to perform and to show results, because we really needed a big signal to show the investors that we are able to pull the retail thing off. So we shifted our focus from primarily online to primarily offline and tried to acquire as many stores as quick as possible. So we picked up the phone and we used the existing network of our investors in order to acquire as many stores as possible. And already by February 2023, we were able to celebrate a huge milestone, which was that we were selling in over 600 stores, primarily in Denmark and Sweden. It was a lot of work to supply 600 stores continuously with our products, because we had to invest so much money into inventory, we had to completely rethink the packaging of our products, and we had to heavily invest into eco labels, because of course the standards of the supermarkets were higher than the standards of our online customers. Even though our team execution was on point and we got into 600 stores relatively fast, we now had to wait for the sales numbers that came from the stores, and we couldn't really do much about it. And unfortunately, the sales numbers of our product was just not as good as we hoped for. So the shelves were full, but the customers were just not buying fast enough for the supermarkets to really believe in that product. Of course, at the same time, we had locked a lot of inventory, we have betted big on this opportunity. Initially, there were some reorders from bigger stores, and we thought that we were onto something, but eventually it just faded out because the customers were just not ready for the product. In 2023, we gave it one last push by rebranding the company, by sourcing new products, by launching new initiatives. And I think we were also on a very good target by just lowering our revenue numbers and lowering the cost and turning the company profitable. But the revenue was just so much lower in that kind of setup that the valuation that we set in the beginning was simply too high. So at one point, my two co-founders and we just sat down and we looked at the numbers and said that this company has a future, but not with us, because this was not what we initially planned on doing. Because the future of the company no longer aligned really with what we set out to do initially. And we just, shook our hands and said, it was a good try, but we will end it here and file for bankruptcy. So in those 3 short years, we were able to grow our revenue from 250,000 euros in 2021, then to 310,000 euros in 2022, and finally to 420,000 euros in 2023. And all that while pivoting the business from online to offline, while struggling with market dynamics and also dealing with strong customer headwind in 2022. So overall, I'm very proud of what we have achieved, but it was just not meant to be, no matter how hard we tried. Those 3 years were still the most insightful of my life, and I've learned so much that a business school could never ever teach you. I see it now looking back as kind of a 3-year business apprenticeship where you could just learn everything from marketing to product sourcing, product development, bookkeeping, hiring, firing, the whole shebang. Thank you for watching the video. I hope that this video doesn't discourage you from building what you're building or what you're planning on building, because the truth is that startups can of course be brutal, but even if you don't find the success that you were initially searching for, you will always learn so much along the way that it will always be worth the journey. And I strongly believe that, because it was the case for me. Subscribe to my channel if you want to hear more of those honest breakdowns, because I will be sharing them here on a weekly basis. So see you in the next one.